Hi everyone, it's Brent Abel here, WebTennis, and glad you're here with me today on another Web Tennis Players Workshop webcast. Today's topic is about what we should do and really those things that we shouldn't do the day before a big match, such as a league match, a tournament, or even, bragging rights, that kind of a match against a good friend. And before we get started, if you are on Twitter today and you feel compelled to tweet anything out that you like what you're hearing, would really appreciate a tweet. You can go and use WebTennis as the hashtag. And joining us today is Ian Westerman. Ian is an online tennis instructional colleague of mine who is the founder of EssentialTennis.com. He's the creator of Doubles Domination, a graduate of the Professional Tennis Management Program at Ferris State University, a USPTA certified pro, and a heck of a good tennis player. Ian lives in Frederick, Maryland with his wife and 17-month-old daughter. Ian, really good to have you here with us today. Thanks so much for taking some time to help us out with what is really an important element of prepping for a good match. Ian, welcome and glad to have you with us today.
Hey, Brent. Well, thank you very, very much for having me. It's been great getting to know you over the past couple of months or so, and I really appreciate you having me with you and to speak to your audience, and hopefully the information that we can give them to them today will be really helpful and beneficial to their tennis games. I know it's, as you said a moment ago, definitely a really important topic and something that if players don't understand and if they don't use, good, I guess I'll use the word tactics, the day before a match, or good planning or preparation, it can absolutely be the difference between winning and losing. And yet it's probably one of those things that players don't really consider or think about very carefully when planning for a match. I think they're more into what's obviously happening during the match and not so much the preparation, much less just 24 hours ahead of time. So I think it's a great topic, and thanks a lot for having me.
Well, look, you're really a perfect guy to help us out today. I know you've got a brand new tennis-specific fitness and training program that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But you're really the right guy to help us with, and so let's go ahead and get started. I think the first thing we ought to do here, Ian, is talk about some of the mistakes that we commonly make the day before a big match. And
sure.
If it's a quote unquote big match, and it doesn't matter whether it's a tournament or a league or even a bragging rights type of singles or doubles match, there can be a lot of perceived and a lot of pressure that you kind of put on yourself. And that kind of stress, we instinctively we want to get rid of that stress. And I think the things that we do sometimes to get rid of that stress really are not great for the day before prep for a match. I mean, such as we might go out and do some training. We might go out and we might do some running. We might do some cardio. We might do some strength training. Those kinds of things to kind of reduce the stress. And I really believe, it's, at least that one day before the match that, you really want to try to get or you really want to try to stay as fresh as possible. I think sometimes we go out and work on our strokes. And, you can pound the forehand, the backhand, the serve. And I see people out there the day before a big match, they're hitting like 75 to 100 serves. And I go, you're out of your mind. You're just going to wear yourself out. The other thing that we can do is we kind of lay around and do nothing. And, that's not really a good situation either, because you sort of lay around and you really start stressing out about what's coming up tomorrow. And then I think the other thing, too, is we think, well, tomorrow's a big day, so I really need to kind of, change things. And, one of the things might be sleep habits. You say, well, if I normally go to bed at, say, 11 o'clock at night, well, tonight I'm going to bed at 9:30. And I don't think that's a great plan either. So, Tell us a little bit about what you feel. I mean, I know that with this new tennis specific program that you've got, this strength and conditioning and fitness program. Ian, tell us why those kinds of things are not great to do the day before a big match.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to just take just one at a time and go back and forth about
Well,
them, or do
yeah,
you
I
want me
mean,
to
tell
touch
me.
on
I
all
mean,
four?
I've got do this up here in the screen. Number
Hmm.
one is no cardio or no strength training. For me, when I've done that in the past, it really just kind of wears me out. And kind of what's your feeling on that in terms of making sure that you just don't overdo it that day before?
Sure. Well, let me first say that I'm right on board with you when you're talking about, the day before a big match, and you get those nerves and a little bit of anxiety, and you really start getting, pumped up and excited for it. I personally know exactly what you're talking about, and I know everybody listening that plays competitive tennis on a regular basis definitely can relate to that as well. And I am one of those people where when I get excess energy or maybe a little jittery or anxious, I do like expending that energy through. It doesn't even necessarily have to be through lifting weights or running. Although recently, personally, that's what I do when I just feel like, oh man, I just got to get out and do something. That's typically what I'll do now. And I agree with you that that can be a really bad thing to do the day before a match, because when you go out and you work your muscles, you work your cardiovascular system, and you break them down, which is what physical training is essentially, is you are breaking parts of your body down, your muscles or your cardio system, so that they rebuild up stronger again. When you do that, you have to give them adequate time to recover and heal again, stronger than before. That's kind of that's the way that it works. You have to give them adequate time to be able to recover. And typically for weight training, or like heavy cardio work, you want to give yourself 48 hours at least to be able to recover to where you're right back to where you started again, feeling fresh and 100%. And so doing that the one day before, 24 hours before, is a bad idea, because it's very possible that you could wake up the next day and your muscles still have not fully recovered. And you're basically walking out onto the court with a body that is still tired, and obviously that's not conducive to peak performance.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that's and I used to do that. I'm telling you, I'd get ready for, and this was before leagues were really around, and I'd go out and get ready for a big tournament match, and I just was so stressed out. I was so nervous. I was so worried
Yeah.
about the potential outcome. I just worked my butt off, and next day I'd come out just really flat. So it
Right.
took me a lot of trial and error. Number two, that I really like to do the day before a big match is do get out in the court. I mean, I do like to get out in the court and do what I call some rhythm hitting, and some rhythm hitting is where it's not a competitive thing. It's more of a mental thing where you're really trying to get kind of into a groove, kind of into a nice, very comfortable, relaxed groove with your strokes. And for me, what I feel like is I really want to, I want to focus on a sort of, 70, 75% swing speed, but ensuring that I'm really keeping my eyes down at the point of contact, and I'm really stretching out to the finish position, so that I'm not sort of setting myself up for, kind of an anxious, kind of a tense swing. And so what I'll do is I'll go out and maybe for 45 minutes get a kind of get a light sweat. I don't really want to get burned down on it. Don't need to go for more than 45 minutes. And if we kind of go through these 2, 3, and 4. One of the things that I really want to make sure I don't do is start evaluating, well, how am I
Yeah.
hitting today? Well, it could be that you go out in that light rhythm hitting and you don't hit the ball perfect every time. Well, it used to be for me, I'd go out, and if I didn't hit every ball on the screws dead perfect the day before, I'd start to panic. And, so for me, I want to get out there, kind of stretch out, use the rhythm hitting more as kind of a stretching opportunity, and I will stop maybe every 10 minutes, kind of do a light stretch in terms of my shoulders, maybe get my legs stretched out. And that's going to take maybe 60 seconds. How do you feel about that? I mean, is that kind of a good activity if you're to go out in the court the day before a match to, spend 45 minutes doing something like that?
Absolutely. As long as I think people keep in mind number three. I personally think that that's probably the most important part. If your listeners and viewers are going to go out and hit the day before, I think that can definitely be constructive as long as they don't get all analytical and technical. And I like the word evaluate there. You don't self-evaluate and get too into your own strokes. And I think that can be really hard, especially for people that will be listening to this, webinar. People that are coming online to look for tennis instruction typically are the type that are kind of self-analytical and are, kind of constantly trying to figure out what they can improve, what they can change about their strokes. And that's a good thing, but it can also be a really bad thing as well, because if you head into a match, actively thinking, wow, how am I going to fix that, my forehand? I need some more topspin on my backhand. I'm really not pronating enough on my second serve. You get all these technical thoughts going on in your head, and you walk out onto the court where the next day where you need to just be able to perform, relax, and be able to pick up on tactical and strategical cues from your opponent to be able to actually compete effectively. And if you're distracted by a whole bunch of technical things, in terms of swing mechanics, that's going to get in your way big time. And so I really like that you added that about hitting the day before. Yeah, don't overdo it. Relax. I like that you put down a smile. Enjoy yourself. Just have a good time. Don't overthink it. But I think for probably most of the people watching this and listening to this, I think, in my opinion, probably the biggest thing is that don't evaluate how you're hitting part. Don't fall into the paralysis of analysis mindset the day before a big match.
Well, yeah, and I think the other thing too is that it's tempting sometimes to try to tinker, and
Yeah.
and especially if you've been working on something recently, and now it's the day before the big match. I mean, it's really
Right.
tempting to not only evaluate, well, how much have I actually improved on that stroke, and to continue to tinker, and I mean, my belief in matches is that when you go out there, you've got what you've got, and you can't really
Yep.
sort of manufacture strokes once a match gets starting. So, the day before, guys, you got to really make sure that you trust that whatever work that you've put in on changing your strokes, or changing a stroke, or changing something, that whatever work you've put in, that the less you try to evaluate it and the more you trust that it'll come out on its own, the better you're going to play. So, well, let's move on to the next page here. And, some of this is, Ian, really, really obvious. But, for me, it took me a long time to kind of start thinking about, hydration and nutrition and these kinds of things. And, I'm not going to get into nutrition about specifically what people should be eating the day before, because everyone's got really what works best for them. But, for me, I really had to start preparing for matches, even if I was, if I was going to play a weekend tournament. I mean, you really got to start to hydrate, and I think that this is something that, guys my age, we really weren't taught to do this, and
Sure.
it's really an obvious thing to do, that you got to hydrate. But, I think that, if you start the day before, hopefully that's not too late in terms of hydration. But, I really try to pound, as much water in there as possible the day before. And, as I said here, good nutrition, duh. Well, there's some dumb things we can do. I mean, a lot of fried foods and all that kind of stuff. It's just stupid. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't set you up. And, maybe that's another thing that we should have talked about in terms of poor nutrition the day before, as a way to kind of, break through any kind of stress that we're experiencing the day before. In your experience, Ian, what's your 2 cents worth on hydration and nutrition the day before?